the recording. All right. So, good afternoon. So, team, we thought this session is going to be very important for you because most of the people on this call today are from the software and digital, and many of you, if not all, are either developers or testers, right? And in today's era, you all know how Copilot, is being used by organizations, including our customers, to get in the productivity gains when it comes to coding, when it comes to testing. Obviously, in a 2 hour session, you will get to know a lot about how to use Copilot to write the code or to test the code, and not only just developing the code, but also, how do you review the code? How do you make sure that, you don't do simple mistakes? How do you install it? And not only just writing simple codes, but how do you write functions? How do you do integration with some of the other functions? A lot of these aspects will be told over the next 2 hours. But obviously 2 hours is 2 hours, right? So there's only a limited that you will get to know. The real test will be how do you practice it after the end of these 2 sessions, right? Where you will get to practice on your own. And that is where, you all will learn. And as and when in your accounts or your projects, we have been in touch with the customers. Many customers have already started giving us permissions where you will use this particular code. So important thing will be that when you practice, make sure that if you were taking x number of hours, let's say 4 hours to write a small piece of code, can that 4 hours reduce? And that is the practice that you will do to get the productivity gains. Initially, you will practice in an environment where you are doing the POCs or pilots, and later on, you will request the real licenses from your accounts, where you will start using it in your accounts. And that is something that we will let you know after this call, not in this call, in terms of how do you get the environment to practice and things like that. So welcome to this session. And my request to you, all of you, is that don't restrict yourself to these 2 hours. After that, do go back, do practice, make sure that you are ready to start using Copilot in your live projects, right? And this is just a practice that we are giving you. So welcome, and thanks again, to the GitHub team for sparing this kind of time. Yeah. So wishing you all the best.
Thanks, Anurag. Over to you, GitHub team. We don't want to take any more time. We can just jump into the session. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Raja, and thanks, Anurag. Anurag, that was a great start to just encourage the guys to get started with Copilot. So before we start, the sales team here at GitHub, I'm taking care of all the South Indian customers, like basically from Bangalore and Kerala. And I have also with me Abhi. Abhi Singh is my partner in crime. He's the solutions engineer, hardcore techie guy. And we both would be taking care of the entire 2 hours. Will hijack your 2 hours today. Sorry for that, but be well persist. Like I would really encourage you to just ask a lot of questions. Whatever you have, just feel free to drop it in the chat, or maybe if you want to like have any sort of questions in between, feel free to raise your hands and we can maybe discuss that on the go. But before we start, and I hand it over to Abhi, just wanted to understand like what is your maturity level in terms of Copilot? If anyone like just wanted to understand like how many people are using Copilot right now, or like it's just a fresh start that you guys want to have with us. So maybe Raja or the team, anyone, if you want to just set that context also, that would help us to drive our conversation in that way.
Shubhajit, you can, majority of the people might have just tried it. There will be people who may not have tried also. Probably you can assume that because, we have people from Quest Global, as well as, we have some faculty who joined from some of our partner institutions also. So please assume that they know what is Copilot and we can take it forward from there. Because it's a large crowd, it might be difficult to do a poll and find out how many people are there.
Right.
So please make that assumption and take it forward.
Got it. Sure, Raj. That really helps. So yeah, over to you, Abhi, if you want to just get started with the basics of Copilot, or if you have any other questions you want to ask before you start, over to you. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, Shubhajit. Thank you for the introduction. So, hi everyone. My name is Abhi Singh. I work as a solutions engineer. I work with Shubhajit, and I'll just go ahead and share my screen and let's quickly get started. So, before I actually show you how Copilot works, I'd like to set some context around what GitHub is. There might be a situation where a lot of you might not be using GitHub. So, we'll set that context and like how Copilot works with that, how you can use Copilot without GitHub, and then we can see some examples of it working the way a developer would work on it, right? So I'll just go ahead and share my screen. If somebody can just let me know if y'all can see my screen, that will be really helpful.
Yes,
All
we
right,
Yeah, it is visible, Abhi.
cool then. So I'll just
Yeah,
go
we
ahead
can
and
see it.
start this presentation. Cool. So I talked about myself, but let's talk about what GitHub is. So GitHub is the agentic developer platform which gives you this ability to build, scale, and deliver secure software, right? Now, what does it actually mean, right? So GitHub is the home of open source. Everybody might have already heard about it, but GitHub is also enterprise ready and it's a secure platform. And our experience with the developer community has uniquely positioned us in such a way that we are able to offer this developer friendly platform, which is also governable and also helpful for enterprises to make sure that security is in place, right? It's not an afterthought, but it's baked into the product. Apart from that, you can use GitHub as your organization grows to grow your capabilities as well. And across all these different steps, you have Copilot and in form of SDLC, like in form of agentic SDLC available, right? So what does it look like? So the GitHub platform has multiple different steps to it, right? So like there's the collaboration aspect of it where you can have your code repositories, you can create pull requests where you create a request for somebody to review whatever changes you want to merge from one branch to another. Then we have like availability of projects, we have issues are similar to your project management tools, right? So you might be using something like Jira or any other tool like that, like Azure boards. GitHub issues is similar to that, GitHub projects is similar to that, so you can use that. And then like other things related to like discussions, so like your developers can have discussions around it. Then in terms of productivity, we have CI/CD tools with GitHub Actions, we provide automation, we have code spaces which gives you an ability to spin up like an IDE in cloud on demand, which is configured to your requirements, and then you can destroy it or like wind it down whenever it is not required, right? So it's like as easy as that, and it's part of GitHub platform. And then there is security, which has like GitHub Advanced Security, which includes Dependabot, which takes care of any sort of dependencies that you might be using. So identifying if there are any vulnerabilities there or any new dependencies have been released, and helping you with closing that gap, closing those vulnerabilities. And then there is security overview and code scanning, which takes care of you know uh, scanning your code for any vulnerabilities, helping you resolve those vulnerabilities. And then there's secret scanning, making sure that you're not pushing any secrets in your repositories, which is like more of a proactive approach than a reactive approach. So we'll also take a look at some of that aspect. And then there is scale that comes with GitHub, right? So we have more than 180 million developers on GitHub platform, and these are developers who are using our open source platform right now. And then we have more than 500 million repositories which are there in the public domain, right? And you can imagine like we probably have more in like enterprise domain as well, right? So we come with that scale, but we're not limited with that, right? Like we work where the developers do work. So we have integrations and APIs which are seamlessly working with different tools that your developers might already be using or that you might already be using. And across all these different steps that I just talked about, you have availability of GitHub Copilot, right? Which enables this agentic workflows that you can build around your software development lifecycle. So we'll see some examples around that. Now, when I talk about integrations, here are some examples of it at every step of the SDLC. So pretty much any tool that you might be using, GitHub does integrate over there. So that includes something like Jenkins. So like if you already are using Jenkins for your CI/CD, GitHub has direct integration there. Or maybe you're using Jira for your project management or Trello, GitHub works over there as well, right? Like pretty much every step of the process. Apart from that, when it comes to GitHub Copilot works where you work, right? So it's not just limited to the IDE or like a specific IDE. It's available across different IDEs, right? So it's VS Code, there is Visual Studio. We have availability for all the JetBrains IDEs, which includes IntelliJ IDEA or PyCharm or even Android Studio, right? And then we also have integrations with Xcode and Eclipse. So it doesn't matter which IDE your developers prefer or you prefer in general, you can use GitHub Copilot over there, and it's a simple plugin or an extension that you can install. With VS Code and Visual Studio, it comes baked in. But with the other tools, you have to just go to the plugin store or the extension store, search for GitHub Copilot, and you'll find it there. And you just have to install it and log in with your enterprise account. That's it. And then you have access to GitHub Copilot. So we'll see some examples over there as well. And like I keep talking about this agentic platform or the agentic future, right? Well, the agentic future is here, right? We always talked about having agents like software agents or review agents or security agents taking a lot of work, sort of grunt work that your developers had to do, or like mundane tasks that your developers had to do would be taken away by these agents, and your developer would focus on like something which is more relevant to their work, something more interesting and exciting and cutting edge, right? So that was the future that we always envisioned, and that is actually here now. So we'll see some examples of that. So the first step in the process was having agent mode in VS Code or in other IDEs, right? So what agent mode does is it like plans, like just like a developer that you might have, it plans out what's supposed to be done. Then it makes changes to your code repository and runs your code, verifies if it is working right. If it is not, then it fixes any problems and then like iterates, right? And eventually once it's satisfied with what the output is, it gives you that output, right? Like all the files that have been changed. And all you have to do is review the file changes, the code changes, making sure that whatever is generated is valid, and go ahead and approve it and make it part of your code. So that is where we started with agent mode in your IDE. VS Code was the first one, then we have it in Visual Studio and all the other IDEs as well. But then the next step was enabling this agent with capabilities outside the IDE, right? And that was made possible using MCP. So for those who might not know about it, MCP is an open standard created by Anthropic, which is again a model provider company. And this open standard allows agents to work with different tools outside the IDE's domain, right? So let's say you have certain designs in Figma. Uh, the agent in your IDE can connect using MCP with that design, like that with your Figma instance, and sort of get those designs and then have that context in place. So that was the next step of it. And then we have coding agents, right? So autonomous contributors to your project, and this is not even within your IDE. So that is where Copilot has that additional potential where it is not restricted within your IDE or where your developers are actually working, but it's also available on different surfaces like on github.com or even on a CLI, right? So we will see some examples in that direction as well. Well, here you see like one example of like assigning certain tasks to this autonomous agent. So like imagine some sort of minor bug that has been raised or some sort of smaller issue in terms of increasing code coverage. All you have to do is assign that task to GitHub Copilot, and you can do that assignment from pretty much any project management tool of your choice. So right now we have integrations with issues on github.com, of course, but with Jira as well as let's say if you want to assign some tasks through your Microsoft Teams or Slack, you can do that right away, right? So that is also possible. And we also have the code review agent. So like let's say if some developer has worked on contributing some code and they have gone ahead and created a pull request, you can actually assign that pull request for an initial level of review to GitHub Copilot, and Copilot will suggest certain reviews, like it will do the review and suggest certain comments around maybe making sure that the whatever code is being submitted for the pull request, it's valid and following the company guidelines. And you can define those guidelines as well. I'll talk about those custom instructions in a bit, but that's where like review agents really help. And then we are moving towards this agent headquarters or agent HQ, right? So what this agent HQ is actually, what this agent HQ actually is having the ability to manage all these agents that we just talked about, right? And many more that are going to come ahead in terms of, like site reliability engineers, agent, or like any third party agent that you might want to use, right? Also, I just like to request, like, if you all have any questions, right, just feel free to drop them in chat, and I'll take those questions whenever I have some time in between, right? So if you all have any questions, just feel free to drop them in chat. All right, so that is where Agent HQ came into the picture, and we'll take a look at the Agent HQ as well. And all these agents, right? Like, it's not just talk. So when we are talking about different types of agents, GitHub, like even at GitHub, we use these agents, right? And from the moment we started using GitHub Coding Agent is the largest contributor to the github.com repository on GitHub, right? And a third largest contributor is the code review agent. Sometimes it's third largest, sometimes it's fourth largest. But you can see, right? Like, this is not all just talk, but it's actually working in real world, and like a platform like GitHub is able to leverage this to ship faster and actually give you the features with stability and security. All right, so let's look into what this actually looks like for a developer. So cool. I hope you all can see my Chrome window.
Yes. Yes, we can see. Yeah.
All right. So here I have this code repository. This is a sample code repository. If you all could just please go on mute. All right. All right. Thank you. So here's a sample code repository that I have. Now, you might have like a similar sort of code repository, right? Like whenever you're working on any sort of task that has been allocated, or maybe you're working on a project. So let's say you are like, there's a new developer who has joined this team, and they are supposed to go ahead and look into this code repository, make sure that everything, like, understand the code repository, what the project flow is all about, and then going a step forward, start contributing as well, right? So there's a Jira ticket that has been assigned to them, and they have to go ahead and work on it, or maybe a GitHub issue that has been assigned to them, and they have to go ahead and work on it, right? So this is like a standard GitHub code repository for those who might not be aware of this view. So this is where you see your code. This is where you can switch between branches. There are around 11 branches in this particular repository. There's like a section for issues, pull requests, action is for CI/CD, projects is for your project management. Then there's models for playing around with like different LLM models. Then there's a wiki, which is like similar to your knowledge base for any sort of project. And then there is security tab. We'll take a look at that as well. That's dealing with GitHub Advanced Security. There's insights for getting more information about your repository, and then there's settings to actually make certain changes around policies and controls around your code repository, right? So with GitHub, you have your GitHub Enterprise, and then within an enterprise, you can have multiple organizations. And within an organization, you can have multiple different repositories. Each repository could represent a project, and each organization could represent a business unit, right? So you can structure it in that way. Like right now, I am within the Octodemo organization, and within that, I'm in this particular repository. Now coming to the code over here, so in terms of like all these different files are listed over here. There is a readme.md file which is actually rendered out to talk about what this project is all about. And then let's say if you want to start working on this code, all you have to do is click on this code drop down and either clone it. So it just follows the standard git commands to clone code repositories, or you can also launch a code space. So here's a code space which you can directly launch. I already have one code space launched over here. The first time you would open this, that will show you a green button. And this is like an instance of VS Code, but it is managed by GitHub, right? So I already have it open in this window. And you can see this looks very similar to VS Code, right? So this helps you in sort of reducing that time to actually set up your local environment, So let's say if you have a new team member join in, they don't have to waste their 1 week to set up their laptop with like all the different required versions of software to run the project. You can all have all of that set up under the dev container and sort of define what are some extensions, what are some other details that need to be set up, what is the host requirement. And then you can also create your own container using Docker Compose, where you define like with a Docker image, you define what sort of softwares are already installed in this particular container, right? So this is what CodeSpace is all about. Now, this is really helpful in sort of getting started faster, and like pretty much every functionality that you would see on VS Code is available over here. But since we're talking about Copilot mostly, let's maybe get into a local instance of VS Code. So uh, what I have done is I've already gone ahead and cloned this in my local instance of Visual Studio Code. So you can see that over here. And yeah, so I have Copilot over here as well. So cool then. So let's get started. So the first thing that you would probably do is within your IDE, you would go ahead and install the extension for GitHub Copilot. I already have it installed over here, and there will be a toggle chat option on the top or at the bottom depending upon your IDE. So once you click on that, if you're not logged in, it will ask you to log in. Since I'm already logged in, I can view that as well over here. So like I'm already logged in using my GitHub account, so I'm able to use my Copilot instance. If you have Copilot licenses allocated to you, you'll be able to see a lot of different models over here. So let's talk about this view. All right, so when you click on this chat icon, for you it might look a little different. It might look like the Copilot icon, but once you click on that, this sort of window will open up. And here you can see there are like two drop downs at the bottom. The first one defines different chat modes. So the agent mode is the most popular one because it's the most powerful one, of course. It can make changes to your code, it can run your code, verify the output, like iterate on top of it. Then there is the ask mode, which can be used for asking simple questions. So let's probably use the ask mode here. And let's ask about this particular project. So what is this project all about? All right, so while that is working on it, let's talk about some other uh, chat mode. So apart from ask mode, there is edit mode. So edit mode is more of a precursor to the agent mode, where you have to define which files you want the LLM to work upon or make edits to. But most people just default to agent mode because it's much more faster. And then we have recently introduced the plan mode. So what the plan mode does is, like, unlike agent mode, it will actually go ahead and plan things out for you. And let's say if you ask it to do something, it will ask you follow-up questions. So it won't just directly go ahead and start making changes, but it'll ask you follow-up questions, clarify everything just like a developer would, and then actually go ahead and start working on it. There'll be a start implementation button, and you can click on that and it will start implementing the functionality. Apart from that, you would see there are certain custom agents over here as well, or custom chat modes. And we'll talk about that, how you can use these advanced GitHub Copilot functionalities, but these are relevant in that way. Next to the chat mode drop down, there is a model selector or a model drop down, and here you can see like there's like models from all these different providers. So it's not just OpenAI models, but like models from Anthropic, so like Claude Sonnet 4.5, which is my favorite model for coding tasks, and then like models from Google Gemini. So we have Gemini 3 Pro as well, which got recently released, and even like GPT 5.1, which is the latest OpenAI model. And we also have like an XAI model over here, which is Grok Code Fast 1, which is made for actually writing code. Next to that, you can see there is a multiplier, right? So this multiplier actually talks about how many premium requests does this particular model use. So if you are using GitHub Copilot, you get allocated certain premium requests per month as a user. And according to the multiplier next to these models, that many premium requests will be used for a particular prompt. So like some of these models are free of cost, some of these models are 1x, the Claude Opus 4.1, which is the best model in the market right now, but it's also very expensive in nature. It's like 10x, right? So you can pick and choose which model you want to use for your specific task. But let's say if you're not really sure which one to use, you can always default to auto. And the best part using auto is it will determine which model is best for giving you the answer, but it will also give you a 10% discount around what how many premium requests are getting used, right? So that's always relevant. So I would recommend, if you already have Copilot licenses, please do try this out and explore and see which model really works for you, or does auto really does the charm for you, right? All right, so I'll stick to GPT 4.1 for the time being, and let's take a look at what response we got. So GPT 4.1 has gone ahead and scanned the entire repository to identify what this particular project is all about. There is a backend, there is a front end, and then there is like a bunch of documentation around it and detailing everything, right? Like there's architecture diagram as well, which is detailed somewhere. So it's like linking that file over here. You can go ahead and review that too. So let's ask it, how do I run this? All right, so it's actually going through that. All right, so it's like given me some details around how I can like actually go ahead and run this project. So what I've done is I've actually gone ahead and run this project already. And let's take a look at what this project is all about. So I'll switch to this window or this tab, and okay. So this project is running on localhost 5137 on like since I ran it locally, and uh, looks like an e-commerce website, right? There's product section over here, and in this product section there are like different items, different objects. Now I do know that there was one task that was allocated to me, so let's take a look at some of the tasks over here. Go to this tab with project already open. I'll open issues in a separate tab, and here I see there are like a bunch of different issues. So let's take a look at one of these issues. Okay, cool. So this one. So this one is about creating a shopping cart page, a shortcut page from the header. Cool. So imagine you're a developer, right? You get assigned some task like this. You would go ahead and want to make sure to sort of dry run the project, like kind of see what it is all about. So let's do that. Let's take a look at this project. Let's maybe try to add something to cart. Looks like the cart functionality has not been built. So I think that is what is being asked over here. And what I will do is I'll assign this to myself. All right. There was another task that I just saw over here, which was talking about adding autocomplete suggestion for search bar, right? So this particular task is about there's a search bar, and it's asking us to see if we can add the autocomplete feature. So let's see how that works. Okay, so I don't think there is an autocomplete feature. There's like an automatic search, but no autocomplete. Cool. So I can go ahead and start working on it, but I've already assigned one task to myself. How about I assign this to Copilot? So you might see there is an option over here to assign this task to Copilot, just the way you would assign any sort of issue or task to a member of your team or to yourself. You can assign this task to Copilot as well. So I'll just go ahead and click on this. And here it's asking me what should be the base branch. So the Copilot coding agent will never make changes to your code repository directly, right? That you can be, like well assured of. Like Copilot coding agent will never do that, because we want to make sure that there is a human in loop who is responsible for vetting and confirming whatever output the LLMs are giving, right? Because since only when we have a human in loop, we can make sure that these LLMs are aligned with what we really want to generate or what we want to really build. So here I am just going to use the base branch as main, and then there's a section for custom agents. So there's like a few custom agents over here. We'll talk about those custom agents and how you can create them, but I'll just go ahead and go with the default agent. You can add your optional prompt over here, but I think the issue is good enough into explaining what we want to do, and I'll just go ahead and click on assign. All right. And what this will do is this will assign this particular task to GitHub Copilot, and Copilot will go ahead and start working on it. So just like a developer would, like GitHub has reacted to this particular issue, it's looking into it. And then what it would do is it will go ahead and create a pull request for this as well. And you can do this assignment of task not just from GitHub issues, but from any project management tool of your choice. So if you're using something like Azure Boards, you can assign tasks to GitHub Copilot from there as well. If you're using something like Jira, it's also possible over there. Right, I'll just go ahead and quickly refresh this and we'll give it a few seconds. All right. I would request if you all could yeah, sorry. Let's go back to our code repository over here and let's actually work on that one issue that I assigned to myself, right? I'm sorry, I think somebody is muting me. All right, cool. So getting back to the topic, let's go ahead and like we can go ahead and like look at that particular issue and maybe copy that issue, get that into context. But how about if we could get that context directly here in GitHub Copilot, right? I was talking about this earlier, right? You can use something like MCP to give that ability to the agent. So how about we do that? So I can go ahead and continue over here. I can switch the chat mode to like agent and start working on it. I would like to have a fresh chat window. So what you can do is you can click on this plus icon and this will create a new chat. If you want to go to an older chat, you have to click on the show chats option. You can like go to an older chat as well, right? And here I'll switch to agent mode. And here you can see all the different tools that are available to the agent mode. So there are some built-in tools in terms of making changes to your code repository or running a command or like doing different things, right? But then there are like additional tools that are coming from MCP. So this is the MCP icon over here. And I think we have some MCPs running already. Cool. So the way you configure MCPs is by either you can create a .vs code folder and then add a mcp.json file in that and then add your MCPs directly over there. So I have like some like a Playwright MCP, or like a GitHub Remote MCP and Azure MCP server, right? And how do you get this? So all you have to do is I'll just quickly show you how you can do that. So I'll just do GitHub Remote MCP and I'll open the first link. And here you'll see that there's like a simple button that you can click on to install the MCP server, or you can also just copy paste this into the mcp.json and it will just start working. So the first time you copy paste it, it'll ask you to log in with your GitHub account and then it's all set up, right? You can also install MCP servers across your IDE, right? So this is like, let's say, repository centric or like repository level, where everybody who clones this repository will have this mcp.json file and can start the MCP server directly. But let's say if you want to set it up on your IDE itself, you can do that as well. So like I have context 7, that's another MCP that I use a lot to give me the right context for all the latest libraries that I might be using or dependencies. So I have it set up on my IDE level, right? So that's something that you can pick and choose. And I'll also talk about how you can govern around MCP. So that will be at the end of this particular discussion, where we'll be taking a look at governance and sort of having access management control over that, and also looking at certain uh, metrics around like how people use GitHub Copilot. But we'll get to that. But you can use MCP servers like this. I already have GitHub Remote running. It has around like 77 tools, which means that I can ask the agent to actually go and get certain details from github.com for me. So I'll just switch to Claude Sonnet 4 here, and I'll ask the agent to get all the GitHub issues for this repository. Use GitHub MCP. All right, so it's the first agent tool call that I'm making. So it's just optimizing the tool selection. We'll just give it a few seconds. I think it's pretty much done. And while it's getting all that information for me, so it's making a tool call over here. I've already pre-approved all GitHub remote tool calls, so it's just automatically made that call. But for you, it might be different. It might ask you to approve it. So all you have to do is click on approve and it will make that tool call. And it has gone ahead and listed all the different issues for me, right? So I want details for issue number 5, right? So get all the details for issue number 5. All right. You might have seen one thing over here, right? Like it says used one reference. So what does this used one reference actually mean? So I'll click on it and it shows you this instructions.md file. Now this instructions.md file is there under .github folder. So for every Copilot customization, if you want to do it on repository level, you have to create a .github folder as part of your code repository. And in that you can define a copilot-instructions.md file where you can define custom instructions for what Copilot is supposed to do, right? So whenever Copilot is working on your code repository, this is where it would have its custom instructions, certain review guidelines, which we will talk about later when we are doing pull request review, and then other details around like what are some best practices that your organization follows. Let's say you have certain architecture diagrams that can be linked over here. So like you can see architecture and like SQLite integration.md. If I show you the architecture diagram, it looks something like this. So it talks about like what this particular architecture is all about, and there's even like a diagram over here. So if I just open this in preview, we'll be able to even view that diagram, right? It's like an ERD diagram, a component architecture. So this gives GitHub Copilot that right perspective into what it's supposed to do, right? And here it has gone ahead and actually fetched all the information for me. Apart from the Copilot instructions.md, let's say if you want to have specific instructions for certain file paths or certain file types, you can create your own custom instructions according to different file types. So like over here under like instructions folder, I have api.instructions.md, which are only relevant for the API folder or anything that ends with like .ts within the API/src folder. Then I have a frontend.instructions.md, which is again relevant for the frontend/src or like anything that ends with the .html extension, right? So it can be used in that way, and you can further customize it in that way. So let's take a look at what Copilot has generated over here for me. It has like gotten all the different details. And now I can go ahead and ask it to implement things. I can probably switch to the plan mode, plan everything out, write a proper uh, prompt and sort of ask Copilot to go ahead and start implementing things, right? But I already have the prompt available. So let's say you are in certain situations where let's say you work on certain reusable tasks and there is like a specific prompt that works every time and you want to make sure that this is available to all the users or all the developers within your team, right? Or who are working on this project. So how do you share these reusable prompts? So that is where this prompts folder really comes into the picture. So again, it is under the .github folder. If I open this prompts folder, you would see there is a demo card page prompt over here. And this particular prompt basically is a very nicely written prompt which talks about implementing this one feature. And what I can do is I can actually go ahead and use this prompt directly. And the way we are like adding this prompt to your code repository, this can be versioned and your team can actually work on improving these prompts and making it in such a way that like even folks who might not be as good at prompt engineering will be able to use these reusable prompts to get those productivity gains. So I'll just go ahead and invoke that particular prompt. So the way you do that is by using a slash command, and I think it's called demo card page. And just like that, all I have to do is just press enter, and that's it. It will just go ahead and start implementing it. All right, so we'll let the agent go ahead and do its work, and we'll go back to github.com to see what happened with this particular instance. Cool. So I'll just go ahead and open this in a separate window. This is a pull request that is created by GitHub Copilot. Copilot is working on it. You can see it's gone ahead and updated the pull request details with like a checklist over here, and you can see like it's like different parts of it, like just the way a developer would, right? Like actually plan things out. What are some steps that I need to take care of? At the end, it's doing its own code review, making sure it's running like a code QL scan. So code QL is the underlying technology behind GitHub code scanning, which actually scans your code for any vulnerabilities. So it's actually doing that by itself even before it submits the code for review, right? So it's taking care of that. And let's say if you want to view what the agent is doing, right? Like the idea is to actually assign a task and go ahead and do something more important. But let's say if you want to view what the agent is doing, you can actually click on this view session and it will take you to that exact session and you can view what Copilot is doing. But there is another way to get to that place, and that is where the Agent HQ comes into the picture. So the first part, the core part of Agent HQ is the mission control. So you go to github.com/copilot, and this is the page that you will see. Just a minute. All right. So we are on github.com/copilot. And here you would see something very familiar, right? Like a lot of you who might have used something like ChatGPT would find this familiar, right? Like there is a chat window, you can go ahead and talk to the, the particular LLM, and like you see GPT 4.1 over here. But unlike ChatGPT, you have availability of all these different models from different providers. So you're not just stuck with OpenAI, but you can use something like Claude Sonnet 4.5 or something like Gemini 3, right? That is available over here. Then if, unlike ChatGPT, here, this particular window has context of all your repositories and spaces. So that is where spaces comes into the picture, where spaces helps you sort of have your knowledge base, which can be invoked with GitHub Copilot whenever you require. So it can like hold different files and sort of you can add it as a context over here. So you can like add that as a context. You can add separate files as well. You can upload something as well, and that shows up over here, right? And I'm not sure if you all are aware of this, but GitHub Copilot was one of the first commercial product which was using an LLM behind the scenes. It was like maybe a year before ChatGPT came into the picture. So we are actually the pioneers in this domain. So that is where like GitHub Copilot is really helpful. But not just that, you can also assign tasks from here directly. And you can also create issues. So we'll take a look at how you can create issues as well in a bit. But let's take a look at existing sessions. So you can view all your existing sessions on the left hand side, and you can also view your older chats over here. So I'll go ahead and click on this agent session, and this is the one that we assigned Copilot to go ahead and work on. And you can see, right, like Copilot is actually working on it. But let's say you observed something going wrong. Maybe it has hallucinated, maybe your prompts were not right enough, or maybe something went wrong and it's like going off the rails. All you have to do is just write your messages over here, write a good prompt, ask it to do something else, and it will be steered. So you can actually steer an active session that Copilot is involved in. So we'll let this work and we'll go back to our IDE to see what is happening there. All right, I see that Copilot has like on the Copilot agent in the IDE has gone ahead and made certain changes in the file. I think it has created certain new files, made certain changes into existing files, and it's trying to run a task to build the front end. So I'll allow that. Again, you have that control around like what is the exact command it's trying to run. So I would always recommend making sure to review that and then only allow it to run it. Even though these models have gotten really better, we still want to have that control at the end of the day. And you can actually view all the file changes from here as well. So all the file changes are listed something like this. And now this, so the build was successful. Now it wants to go ahead and run the project. I think the project is already running. So I'll just click on skip over here. I'll switch it back. And it has gone ahead and implemented. Let's verify it, before we keep any of these file changes, let's verify what it has done. So I already have the project running over here. I'll refresh this page. I do see that there's a cart button over here. Let's see if it is working. Okay, looks like it is kind of working, right? If I click on this button, cool. So it takes me to this page and it has actually gone ahead and followed the entire design language. It's like keeping the design and everything. I think it's better than expected, right? So now you might think, okay, this is really working nicely with, like, let's say front end work. What about back end work? Well, the back end work is even better, because if, let's say, you have API specifications well defined, all you have to do is like give it the right context, explain things to it, like, okay, I want it to be in this way, I want these guidelines to be followed, add it as context, add it as instructions, and just ask it to implement things, right? So I didn't even copy anything from anywhere to get the right context. I used MCP to get the details. You can use Jira MCP as well if you want. You can use Confluence MCP as well to get more information from your wiki of choice, and you can use it like that. Okay, so I have one more maybe change that I want to do. Let's say I want to change the color of this button over here, right? So this is proceed to checkout button. It's green in color. For some reason, I want it to be blue. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and take a screenshot of it. I'll go back here. I'll go back and just paste that screenshot. So before that, I'll just go ahead and accept all these changes. So you can go ahead and like accept each of these changes individually, line by line, or file by file, or you can just go ahead and accept everything, which I just did, right? Cool. So I'll just go ahead and add that particular image as context. So you can see that image has been added as a context over here. And I'll just ask the agent to change the color. So change the color of the button to blue. Cool. Let's let it work. Now, this is not the best way to write prompts. Please don't take this as an example. Make sure that you write better prompts, because like I'm very vague around what color, what button. If there were like multiple buttons, it might have gotten confused, right? So I would always recommend.
Call again.
Sorry, please, if you can all go on mute. Thank you. So you just want to make sure that like you give it the right context, the right prompt. The better prompts you write, the better context you give it, you'll be able to get like better answers faster while using less number of premium requests if you're using a premium model, or even if you're like using like a free model, like one of these 0x models, it will be much faster. Yogesh, I see that you have a question. Please feel free to drop it in chat. I'll take that up in a second. All right. Cool. So I think it has gone ahead and made the change already. And let's see if it has done the change, or if it has changed the color. Just a second. Cool. So looks like the color of the button changed immediately, right? So like think of it, right? Like if you're working on some front end work and you want to change something quickly, it's as easy as that. And the better prompts you write, if you ask it to use a specific CSS library, or if you ask it to specify a specific color which is already defined in your project, it can pick that up and make those changes, right? And we are able to view that live over here. Cool. I'll go back to the coding agent session that we have over here. I'll review that and then I'll go ahead and take some questions, because I think there are like a list of questions already listed. So I'll take some questions as well. But let's take a look at this particular session. Okay, so looks like the code QL. All right, so let's see what it did. It went ahead, did some code review by itself, found two suggestions, went ahead and fixed that. Then ran a code QL security scan, didn't find any alerts, any issues, and it's going ahead and creating a summary now. Cool, we'll let it do that. While if we look at the pull request over here, it has gone ahead and actually even taken screenshots for us to ensure that we are able to verify what it has done. And if you want to further verify it, all you have to do is just clone this particular branch and just go ahead and start, run it and review it. That's it. Cool. I think it is done with the work because it's gone ahead and added me as a reviewer as well. Yeah, it's finished with the work on behalf of me. So please always be reminded that whenever Copilot is doing any work, it's doing work on behalf of somebody. So when you assign some tasks to GitHub Copilot, you are the one who is responsible for that task at the end of the day, because GitHub Copilot is just a tool, right? It is not a sentient being like us. So we have to make sure that us as human beings, we make sure that whatever is being submitted, merged to our code, or like whatever output we are using from these LLMs, even in our general life, we make sure that we verify it, we confirm what it is giving us is valid and correct, and then only we move ahead with it. So cool. So it has gone ahead and assigned me as a reviewer. I can go ahead and take a look at all the commits individually. I can look at the files that have been changed. Looks like 4 files have been changed. Cool. So I can look at it in detail. This is a new file that was added. It's a search autocomplete.tsx file. It understood where it's supposed to go. It's like supposed to create it an entity product, right? Which file it was supposed to edit. If I go back to conversation over here, and if I scroll down, so you would see that it would also not automatically go ahead and run all your workflows, right? And also the pull request that is created, it's a draft pull request. So I'll just go ahead and make it ready for review because I think I'm happy. Let's say if you were not happy, if you wanted it to make any changes, all you have to do is just write at Copilot, make this change, and Copilot will go ahead and start working on it, right? So that will be like another session that you can run. And I'll approve the workflows to run. Also, this what this will do is like this is part of the default GitHub workflow where you can actually have like a build setup, like a build workflow, a CI workflow, and like a code scanning workflow, a dependency review workflow, right? So these are like all part of GitHub Actions, but you can easily view that and how that is working here. Cool. While this is running, I'll just take a few questions because I think we would have a lot of them by now. So I'll start from the beginning. I see there is a question from Riaz. How do we prevent Copilot from generating insecure scripts accidentally? All right. So the way Copilot works, we at GitHub make sure that whatever code is being generated by Copilot, it is being sort of verified, and we make sure that through the Copilot proxy, that none of this code is malicious in nature. But again, whatever security standards and processes that you have in place already, just use that to vet whatever code is being generated by Copilot. So if you would see over here, I assigned this task to the coding agent. It went ahead, implemented everything, but it also ran a security scan by itself. And even after that, I am also running a security scan over here. So if you see, there is a code scanning that I did, right? So that is also still happening. So none of that would change. It's just that the velocity of actually working on features and functionalities increases. Another question from Riaz: does Copilot learn from our private GitHub enterprise repos to give custom suggestions? So Riaz, there is no reinforcement learning that happens with GitHub Copilot because we do not retain any of your prompts or the suggestions that GitHub Copilot gives you, right? So there is no way that we can know what you are like talking to Copilot for. What we sort of retain, and that is only for metrics purposes, for understanding usage, is how many times did you interact with Copilot, which model were you using, how many lines of code did you accept, reject. We'll see some examples on that, but there is no way we can retain this knowledge with GitHub Copilot. The way you make GitHub Copilot smart is by giving it the right context. And that is something that I showed earlier in terms of instructions. We'll see some examples around custom agents and how that can be smart, like a specialized agent which is meant to do one task or like a specific kind of task. We'll see some examples after this. All right, I see there is a question from Yogesh. This code space will be available in Maven project also. I am not getting it in my GitHub. So Yogesh, most likely what has happened is code spaces has been disabled by your enterprise or your organization. So let's say if you want to use code spaces, please do reach out to your admin and they should be able to help you out with it. any sort of projects that you might have in terms of, let's say, Java project, or like even .NET projects, or any project that you might have, right? Like it works with CodeSpace. So there shouldn't be any problem with that. I see there's a question from Maya. I don't have a plan mode in my VS Code. How can I get it? Just go ahead and update your VS Code. I think it's due for update. So this is like a new update that we have. Plan mode was announced in on 28th of October, and now this is in GA as well. So you would find it in VS Code already. I see there's a question from Suraj. Is it safe to use agent mode with our own private API token or secrets? Could there be any risk of these credentials being shared or exposed? So, Suraj, to begin with, you should not have any API tokens or secrets in your code repository. That's the first best practice that you should follow. But even if you do have it, GitHub Copilot is not retaining any of that for any training purpose or anything like that. So there is no security threat on that front. But this could result into a security threat otherwise, where, let's say, if some malicious actor gets hold of your private repositories, they'll be able to use these API tokens to get access to your backend systems, your databases. So you should immediately remove all these API tokens and secrets. And I'll maybe show you one example of how you can do that, how you can use GitHub to identify these different tokens and secrets. But you should not have it in your code repository in the first place. It should be in some sort of secure vault, which your developers don't have access to directly. I see there is a question from Muzammil. How different is it from Cursor? Okay, so I think the question was asked at 2:31 p.m. Within like last half an hour, I showed you like a lot of different ways like GitHub Copilot is different from Cursor. Cursor is a good tool, no doubt in that, but it is just restricted to your IDE, right? And pretty much every model that I showed you, every functionality that I showed you on the IDE is also available on Cursor, but we have the ability, if your code repositories are on
Hola, buenos días.
github.com, we have the
Soy
ability
yo.
of having coding agent on
¿Qué
github.com
tal, Jesús?
and having this, uh, like,
Sí.
sorry, can you go on mute? I think somebody was speaking. Thank you. So, because we have GitHub Copilot across these different surfaces and it's not just restricted to the IDE, you can do much more. Like we just saw, I was working on the IDE as well as on, like github.com, and I was able to actually, complete two different tasks at added their commits and everything. And like all the workflows have run, but and they have asked me to review it, right? So imagine that they went ahead and added me as a reviewer, right? So I would get a notification. I'm supposed to go ahead and review this particular pull request. Now, even before I get into this review, right? Like even before I look at any file, there might be certain, silly or like common sort of smaller coding guidelines related mistakes, right? Which don't really need me to, cover that. And maybe what this person could have done is they could have gone ahead and requested GitHub Copilot for an initial level of review. You can also set it up in such a way that every time you create a pull request, GitHub Copilot automatically goes ahead and starts reviewing that pull request to make sure that all the basic guidelines, coding guidelines, are followed by this particular pull request and all the files that have been changed. And uh, like you're not making any of those mistakes where there's like a lot of back and forth between, like, let's say, senior engineer and a junior engineer, right? So we don't want any of that. So you can have Copilot do the initial level of review and then assign a human reviewer to do the final review, making sure that like they just have to look at the business logic of things and confirm that everything is working fine as expected, right? So I've assigned this particular pull request to Copilot, and Copilot would have gone ahead and started a session for review. So you can see like Copilot has started a session. If I go to the agent control plane, I think we'll be able to see the new session pop up over here any second now. I'll maybe launch it from here. Cool. So it is like going ahead and like scanning everything, making sure that like whatever whatever files have been changed is valid, and it's like doing that review, initial review, right? While that is being done, let's maybe take a look at like few other examples, right? Like few other examples of GitHub Copilot helping you at every step of the process. So there's something called GitHub Advanced Security, right? So that is where the security section comes into the picture. I'll open this in a new tab. And for any repository where you enable the security functionalities, you'll be able to see this depend about option, the code scanning option, the secret scanning option. I'll cover the secret scanning in a bit more detail since we had a question around that. But once you enable this, the way GitHub Advanced Security works is it's scanning all your vulnerabilities and listing one like all at once for your developers to work on, but it also has a scoped view into like what is relevant to your developer, right? So the whole idea of shifting left, this really helps in that. So as part of this pull request process, I already have GitHub Advanced Security enabled, and what this does is it actually goes ahead and scans my code repository for any potential vulnerabilities. So here it has gone ahead and scanned it for any of the file changes that I've done, like around 12 file changes, and it's actually listed it all over here, right? And like it's talking about what this particular vulnerability is about, like missing rate limiting, or like uncontrolled data used in path expression, right? Or I think there's one which I really like, which is this one, log injection. Then like it's a very basic thing, right? Like where somebody can actually, if you don't sanitize what you're logging, somebody can actually do some sort of log injection and gain access to your systems, like a malicious actor. So this is really helpful in that it defines what that particular, identifies the vulnerability within the pull request for the files changed, which is relevant to the developer, shows them what this is all about, shows them the path of exploitability. So like where it was found, where it can actually be exploited. And going a step forward using GitHub Copilot Autofix, it also helps you in remediating that, like tells you how you can fix it and even gives you code suggestions around how you can fix it. And all you have to do is just click on this commit suggestion and add it as a new commit. It's as simple as that, right? Like your developers would be owning these vulnerabilities, and you can make sure that if let's say there are like more than let's say there are any critical or high vulnerabilities identified, they are just not able to, or they're just not allowed to merge a pull request. So you can actually control that sort of flow of vulnerabilities within your code repository and restrict it at the development level itself, and sort of have this scoped view as well, where the developer is also happy in terms of, okay, I see what is vulnerable in my code which I just wrote and how I can fix it, right? And yeah, all they have to do is just commit these suggestions. Cool. So you might also ask that, okay, so how about my existing security debt, right? Like how about my existing vulnerabilities in my code? So the way you find it is like by going to the security page, you'll see there is code scanning section. I'll click over here and it'll show me whatever all the vulnerabilities I have in my code repository, right? I can go ahead and review that individually. I can view them individually. Like let's say if I'll take a look at this one, I can actually go ahead and view it. It's like already suggesting the fix over here, and I can actually go ahead and assign it to somebody or even GitHub Copilot, and Copilot will go ahead and start working on this. Like the security agent will go ahead and start working on this, fix it, and create a pull request for me. But then it might be that like I would have to do this for every single vulnerability one at a time. Actually, no. What you can do is you can actually go ahead and create a campaign across your organization and sort of have it in such a way that like it has filters. So like this one, I have this one campaign which I created, and it's like due tomorrow. So I have to actually go ahead and fix it. Now I can go ahead and like individually assign these to Copilot, or go ahead and start working on them individually, or I can select all of them and directly assign it to Copilot from here. Just as simple as that, right? So it's like plain and simple as that. Like it'll just go ahead and create that particular pull request for me and start a session for me, and it will actually go ahead and fix that issue for me. All right, I'll take a few questions now. Okay, so I had answered questions until Kiran. Okay, I see there is a question from Veera Kumar. The MCP option is not available. Is this controlled by user privileges? So depends where you're looking for the MCP option. It could be multiple reasons. Uh, if you don't have like your the plugin or the extension or your IDE up to date, it might be that MCP is not showing up over there, or MCP options might have been restricted by your admin. So please do reach out to your admin and ask them if they can enable it for your organization. I see there is a question from Muzammil again. So custom prompts are readily available for all projects, or they are customized. So custom prompts or like reusable prompts is available for pretty much every project. All you have to do is go ahead and create that .github folder, and within that create a prompts folder and add your reusable prompts, which is shared across, shared with anyone who is like cloning that particular repository. So that way it's like available to everyone. Another question. Sorry if y'all can go on mute. Thank you. So I see there is another question. Is there any agent testing after each modification in the code? So yes, we just saw like CodeQL went ahead and verified everything. But let's say if you want the agent to even run certain test cases or update test cases, you can ask it to do that. You know what? Let's see one example. So since you had this question already, and I was anyways going to talk about it later on. So let's take a look at that as well. And also we have the pull request overview already over here, so we'll take a look at that too. So maybe yeah, let's go over here. So whenever you're on any of your whenever you're on like your code repository like this, right, you can actually like connect to the agents panel directly from here by clicking on this button, this drop down, and all you have to do is you can just write what you want to do. So I want to run all integration tests. Okay, write integration tests using Playwright. You can also choose to use Selenium for the front end. And what I will do is I will use the BDD specialist. So this is a special kind of uh, agent that I have, which is the BDD specialist. We'll see how it is written, and I'll just go ahead and assign this task, and this will just create a new agent session. Let's take a look at the BDD specialist. So the way you can look at it is by going to the .github folder here, and within that you would have an agents folder. And within the agents folder, you can define your own custom agents. So here is one custom agent where you define what this particular agent is responsible for, what does it know, some best practices that your organizations might follow, some, like for BDD, let's say you have like certain step definitions already defined. You mentioned that over here, or where it can go ahead and find that, or maybe if you wanted to make a special tool call to your Confluence using MCP, you can define that over here as well, and it will go ahead and do that, right? So it's like it's as strong as that, right? And like here I have like defined how I want my Gherkin standards to be, how my Playwright test structure should be, right? Like it's like really like customizable like that. But like I've already defined the best practices for me. And think of it, right? Like if you have a developer or a new QA person joining your team, you would give them these kind of context, right? And similarly, you have to give that kind of context to GitHub Copilot, and that's how it's able to give you that result, right? So we'll take a look at that particular pull request once the task is a bit done. But let's take a look at this particular pull request review. So it went ahead, did the pull request review for the code that was suggested, and here cool. So looks like some best practices are not being followed. Like after this if statement, like according to my organization's coding standards, if you are using any sort of if statement, you should be defining like a curly braces and all that. Or when it comes to like handling certain details. Like it has just gone ahead and like verified everything. It's also suggesting what is how you can actually fix that particular uh, like breach of guidelines, and it's as simple as that, right? Like it's pretty straightforward in that way. All right. So you see, like there are like a couple of agents already running. Just a second. Yeah. So here, like this is working on that, fixing all those security vulnerabilities that we found, right? So I assigned all those 4 security vulnerabilities to the security agent. It's gone ahead and like working on it. And this one is the BDD specialist, where we assigned it to go ahead and start the work. So if you would see in this session, it's like setting up different things for itself to work. And then it's also defined like where it's beginning the custom agent. So the BDD specialist is starting from here. It's like looking at all the different files and making sure that it has the right context. And then it will start working on building the test cases as well. Meanwhile, I would also like to maybe take up some more tasks since we have so much productivity increase. So I'll go ahead and click on issues over here. Just give it a few seconds. All right, I see there is okay. So let's go ahead and create one issue, right? So I was talking about like GitHub Copilot at every step of the process. Let's use Copilot to create an issue. All right, and I'll use it to increase code coverage to, let's say, 90% for all APIs. All right, and I'll just go ahead and maybe select GPT 5.1. I'll click on send, and it'll just go ahead and like look at my repository and sort of plan things out and build out the issue template for me. And then I'll just go ahead and approve it and it'll create that issue for me. So let's do that. Cool. I think this looks good. I'll just click on create. All right. So I think it's already ready, and I'll go ahead and assign this to Copilot as it is. Cool. So I think we should have more agent sessions spinning up over here at any side. Okay, so we have the new agent session spinning up for the code coverage piece. We'll let that happen. And I'll use this opportunity to take a few more questions. So cool. I'll just scroll up a little bit. All right, so I think I answered the question around testing. I think that covers it a little bit, but you can make it more customizable. Cool. I see there is a question from Rajesh. Which one is better, GitHub Copilot or Cursor for better for coding? So Rajesh, since I am, like I'm a solutions engineer at GitHub, I would say GitHub Copilot, but not just that. If you think about it, right, like the way GitHub Copilot works and the context that it has, if your code repositories are on github.com, even better. But if you don't have a code repositories on github.com, the way GitHub Copilot works with the availability of multiple different models and the flexibility of using MCP or not using MCP, giving the governance to your enterprises as well around setting up the policies, and the agents are strong. You can create custom agents. So pretty much every functionality that Cursor offers, we do offer that. But going beyond that, we also give you more context and more functionalities on github.com, right? So in my opinion, I have used both. I have found GitHub Copilot give me more better answers, right? Especially with like more cutting edge models like GPT 5.1. But your mileage may vary. I would suggest doing the apples to apple comparison and sort of seeing which works better for you. I believe GitHub Copilot is up there, especially if you have your repositories on github.com, given the coding agent and the review agent and everything comes under the same license. There is no additional license cost to it. All of this comes under the same license. All right, I see there is a question from Rupashri. If we are working on Figma UI designs, how to work? Okay, okay. There are plenty of questions. I think I just missed that. Just a second. Yeah, no, I think cool. I found it. So if we are working on Figma UI designs, how to work with GitHub Copilot. So just the way you saw it with, I use the GitHub MCP. There's similarly a Figma MCP that you can add, and then all you have to do is give it the API key as part of the MCP configuration, and then the agent is able to go ahead and make calls to Figma to actually get the relevant information about the design and actually help you with front-end development. So I would definitely recommend trying that out. I see there's a question from Sindhu. I am using GitHub Copilot business license as an individual user. How I can check my usage? So to check your usage, all you have to do is go to the IDE of your choice and you'll be able to view it something like this, right? So mine might show like unlimited, but like you would see some number over there. I see there is a question from Rupashri. If we exhaust a premium license, will it be revised against after a certain time period? I would request all of you to please go on mute. Thank you. So after like at the start of every month, your premium requests are revised. So like let's say if you're on business license, 300 premium requests are given to you immediately at the start of every month. If you're on GitHub for Enterprise, it's 1,000. But let's say if you've exhausted it and you have like a genuine requirement for it, you can reach out to your admin team. They can add a budget for your overage, and then you can use additional premium requests beyond your existing 300 premium requests if you have exhausted them at 4 cents a single premium request, right? So that is how the actual like overage works. But it's like again dependent upon your admin team if they want to enable it, if they want to have like a non-zero budget for your team. So please do reach out to them. I see there is a question from Ajo. How does GitHub Copilot handle copyright when generating code? Does it ensure that the code it suggests complies with copyright laws? That's a great question, Ajo. So you might know that like all these models are trained over like publicly available data, right? That includes open source code. So there could be a situation where these models suggest some code which is like matching some public source, like some open source code, but that open source code is under GPL 3.0 license, right? And that could be a problem because GPL 3.0 license does not allow you to monetize that code, and you have to make it open source again if you're using any of the GPL 3.0 licensed code. So how does GitHub Copilot handle that? And it is only GitHub Copilot in the market right now in this particular domain, which helps you in like sort of handling that. So we were going to cover governance in the last 15 minutes, but I'll quickly get into it since we have this question, and this is a great question again. It's like good insight that you have that you want to make sure that you're compliant, and that is where AI controls really help. So this is the AI control panel that your enterprise admin would be able to see. And this is where they can view all the running sessions that are there, any installed agents. So right now we have coding agent and code review. Going forward, as we move ahead with the agent HQ, you will see like more third-party agents show up. I also wanted to show like certain third-party agents that we have. And somebody was asking about cursor. So, like with GitHub Copilot, you get access, not just access to the IDE, but you get access to all these different agents, be it like OpenAI Codex or Claude Code, or even the Copilot coding agent or the code review. So yeah, there's another additional part to it. And there are custom agents that you can control from here. There's like rule sets that you can define, like who can make changes to the custom agent. So what we saw in terms of the repository and the custom agents over there, you can also have custom agents on organization level. So that is shown over here. There's also audit logs where you can view what are some code changes that the Copilot has made. You can monitor that. And then the best part, you get Copilot policies section. So here you can actually manage who has access to GitHub Copilot within your enterprise and your organization, what sort of content is excluded, basically what should like Copilot never look at. So like any repository or any specific type of file, you can add that exclusion over here. Which models are configured for availability. So you can define that, like which models you want to make available. Maybe your organization is not okay with like Gemini models, so you can disable that from here for all your users. And then there is this section around privacy. So this is what aligns with your question, Ajo, which is suggestions matching public code. So if there are any suggestions which are matching more than 150 characters of code available anywhere in the open source market or any sort of public code, we block that. If you just set this to blocked, this will be immediately blocked, right? So this is how you make sure that whatever code is being generated by Copilot is compliant. It's not copyrighted code, or it's not even copyleft code, right? Which could result into facing any compliance issues. And then on top of that, since GitHub is a Microsoft company, Microsoft also offers indemnity on top of it. So there is no other tool out there in the market, especially in AI assistant or like collaborative coding, AI collaborative coding, which offers this kind of governance and control. Which is why we always say that GitHub is not just an agentic platform, but it's also enterprise ready, and it's making these agentic capabilities available to enterprises with safety and security in mind. So this is like one of the most important things that we have in place. Now, this is my demo repository and a demo enterprise, which is why I have it allowed. But for your organizations, this should be set to blocked. And then there's like other controls around features that you want to enable, disable. If you want to disable all preview features, you can do that from here. And like a bunch of other different things as well around like metrics and all, right? And then lastly, since we are already in AI controls, let's talk about MCP. So this is where you can control MCP, right? Like developers love using MCP, but security folks really hate it because like it can open up, uh, entry to any sort of tool out there for your agents. And like earlier, there was no control for that, but now we do. And again, that is where the governance part of comes into the picture, where MCP servers in Copilot, you can enable it or disable it for everywhere, or like you can give that control to different organizations. And then you can also have a situation where you have specific list of MCP servers that you have validated, confirmed, your security folks have vetted it and made sure that it is secure. And then you create your own allow list and add it over here, and then only we sort of give ability for your developers to use just those MCP servers. So that's another level of control that you get with GitHub Copilot, which pretty much you don't get anywhere else. So that is where like the AI controls really helps in governing and making sure that whatever is being done over here is secure and safe. All right. So thank you for that question, Ajo. Like that took us on a detour, but I already wanted to cover that. So I'm glad we were able to get to that. I see there is a question from Prashant. What is the computation requirement in terms of RAM and disk space? So Prashant, there is no specific computation requirement because all this inference is happening on the cloud. So if you are able to run your IDE smoothly, there should not be any issues with that. I see there's a question from Rizwan. How can GitHub Copilot help technical writers or documentation teams, not only developers? So I'm not sure if you would have noticed, but under this, we have a documentation specialist as well. So if I click over here, there's a documentation specialist. Let's do this. Let's maybe ask the coding agent to create the documentation for us. So create well-defined documentation for this repository. And then I'll select the documentation specialist. I'll send it, and that just like that, like, you know, uh, Copilot coding agent is working on it. But you can also use this on VS Code. So you can ask GitHub Copilot on Visual Studio Code to actually do this for you, right? Write documentations, build things for you, create architecture diagrams for you. Like I can maybe ask it over here. Keep and continue. Create a component diagram for the backend. Right, again, very bad prompt. Please write good prompts, but like this will give you the picture. I see there is another question. Can coding standards, architecture standards, security standards, etc. be at MCP level and not at local code base level in the form of .md file? What is the standard practice? So Prashant, that is where like GitHub Copilot Spaces really helps. So if you go to do I have it open somewhere around here? Yeah. So this is where like Spaces really helps, because that is where you can create your own spaces. Now these might not be as relevant, but like you can create your own space and sort of add like more details around like what are some documentations which are relevant, and then as part of this, like the GitHub MCP that I use to get all the issues can also be used to get all the spaces information. So like you can have that added to the instructions. So whenever you are starting, just go to this GitHub spaces and get all the relevant information, and just like that you can do it. So again, like something that you can hit in, like just something that you can do a hit and trial method on, a sort of small pilot on before you actually incorporate this. And we are always ready to help you out if you face any issues or roadblocks. Another question from Manish. Do we use credentials on multiple editors at same time? Can we start from scratch any project? Yes, Manish, you can start from scratch. This will help you in scaffolding, writing your BRD, PRD, building things out, writing user stories, creating architecture diagrams, pretty much everything that you can imagine. GitHub Copilot can help you in that. But again, it can only help you in that. You have to be the one who defines what it does. And then whenever it does it, you have to be the one who confirms what it has done is valid or not. So you can pretty much use it on as many different editors as you want. I see Anoop. I'm a beginner and I would like to work on Python. Does it support that as well? Yes, Anoop. GitHub Copilot supports pretty much every language and framework that is out there. Now, if it is like a very niche thing, like let's say if you're trying to work on COBOL, which does not have a lot of documentation, right? And it's like pretty outdated, it might not give you the best answer. So in that situation, that is where you give it the right context, and then it will be able to help you out. There's a question from Irfan. Will any of our source code used for training the models? Like I mentioned earlier, none of your source code is used for training anything, right? Like by default, because you have an enterprise agreement with us, none of your source code, your prompts, any of the suggestions that we share, none of that is logged anywhere. None of that is used for training any models. So I see you have mentioned like in Cursor AI, we have the option to disable. So like for Cursor AI, you have to explicitly disable that. With Copilot, that is already baked in. We like that's part of our agreement that we sign. So that never happens. And does Copilot store my code prompts or content GitHub servers? If yes, how long? So Riaz, Copilot does not store your code prompts or your context in GitHub server. If you are using the coding agent, then any agent session that you see over at any of these sessions are retained for 30 days. So that's part of our data protection policy. But if you want to remove them, you can remove them, and we get it. But any of the suggestions or prompts or any of these sessions that you see on IDE, this is retained locally on your laptop or on your PC. So none of this is being stored on GitHub servers. I see there's a question from Deepak. Do we have any way to use models deployed on premise? Yes, Deepak. So you can actually use custom models on GitHub Copilot, which are deployed on premise. I was actually, so you might have noticed I was stopping Olama, which was running locally because it was causing a little bit of lag on my laptop. But you can actually configure that. So if you just click on manage models over here, you bring your own models from any of these providers. Sorry about that. So you can bring your own model from any of these providers, and you can actually go ahead and start working on it. Like you can just select any of those providers, and yeah, you can select like which models you want to integrate. So like if you have something available on Olama, you can use that, or even Microsoft Foundry, or even your own Azure Open API key. And you can also integrate that on uh, github.com. I see there's a question from Neetu. How can we use Copilot with AWS CDK? I'm sorry, I'm not too familiar with AWS. Would not be able to answer that in detail. If you could maybe define what that is, that will be helpful. Then there's a question from Archit. I noticed some models are available to you, but not to me. Is that due to a licensing restriction? So Archit, it could be that some of these models have been disabled by your enterprise admin. So maybe you can reach out to them and ask them if they can enable it. If you just go to docs.github.com and search for all the available models, it will be listed over there. And then you can ask your enterprise admin to enable or disable any of the models that you require. Then there's a question from Bivin. Does it support code review and optimization suggestions? Yes, Bivin, we just saw the code review. Ashish has a question. From which platform or documentation can I learn all about this in detail? Also, this whole process as well? Yes, of course. So you can use GitHub Copilot as a Socratic partner to explain things, right? So instead of just asking it to do things like an assistant, you can actually work with it as a partner and sort of tell it like what you want to do. You want to learn this new language, or you want to learn more about GitHub Copilot, right? And it will help you do that. We have this documentation ready. And if you see, like, it has gone ahead and created the component architecture diagram as well. Now it's like really small over here. I can export, like, this is a mermaid diagram, so you can like really easily export it and sort of view it separately. But yeah, you can actually generate documentation and diagrams and just make sure that it is all valid and use it for your project documentation. There's a question from Vinod. On very large code bases, is there an option in Copilot to do impact analysis for modified code? Yes, Vinod. If you can ask Copilot to do that as well. Is there any limitation to Copilot regarding the no lines of regarding the number of lines of code? So Venkatesh, there is no specific limitation in terms of number of lines of code. Now, with every given prompt or suggestion that you give it will try to find the best possible answer with the least number of lines of code that are changed. But again, that's again customizable. Also depends upon the model of your choice, the model that you're using. So it's like pretty much depends upon the model that you're using. Okay, I see there's a question from Irfan. How to make sure that LLM poisoning and similar adversarial attacks can be avoided? Is that already taken care of GitHub Copilot? Yes, it is taken care of by GitHub Copilot already in terms of LLM poisoning. On the LLM itself, because we make sure that whatever code that is being generated, it's kind of scanned by GitHub Copilot as well, right? So like there is that like it's almost impossible to use GitHub Copilot to generate malicious code, right? Like any sort of worm or any sort of like malicious code that can harm your systems. So that there, I mean, definitely there's like different ways of bypassing that, and people are definitely trying to do that in the security domain. And we are also like making sure that we are keeping up with what is being released out in the market and ensuring that we are following all the trust and safety regulations. So that is being taken care of by the GitHub Copilot. But yeah, some best practices to avoid social engineering is do not copy paste any sort of prompt that you see anywhere. Make sure that whatever you are copy pasting or like whatever you're using, you're just validating first. I see there's a question from Bivin. Will it support for AOSP development? From AOSP, I'm assuming you're talking about the Android open source project. And yes, you can use it for AOSP development. There's a question from Raghavendra. Does GitHub Copilot secure the source code or generated code prompts inside the organization environment? Also, yes. So we looked at that as well, like in terms of copyright infringement, where you can block public code. Like if it generates any sort of public code, you can block that. And also whenever code is generated from the coding agent, it makes sure that it's like validating it using code QL for any vulnerabilities and fixes that as well. Does the Copilot integration is the Copilot integration available for GitLab as well as GitHub? So Copilot on IDE is available for every platform, right? So it doesn't matter where your repositories are. You can use GitHub Copilot on the IDE of your choice. So can you all go on mute, please? Thank you. So it doesn't matter which IDE you are using. Sorry, it doesn't matter which IDE you're using or which platform your code is on, like your code repository is on. It could be on GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, anywhere. You can use GitHub Copilot on your IDE of choice. But if you want to use coding agent, what we saw over here, right? All of this, for this, you need to have your code repositories on github.com. Because again, like we would need that reference and that sort of understanding around like where your code actually exists, right? So yeah, so if you want to use GitHub Copilot on your IDE, you can use it pretty much with any platform. But if you want to use the coding agent, what you're looking at right now, for this, you need to have your code repositories on github.com. If my repo is in TFS, whether Copilot review and PR creation, etc., will work or not. So again, Surendran, the same thing stands for you. So if you have your code repositories on github.com, you can use the PR review agent and the coding agent. But if it is not, then you can use Copilot within the IDE. So you can use GitHub Copilot on Visual Studio, sure that whatever code you're generating or even whatever code you're writing, it's valid. There's a question from Bivin, can we integrate with Wireframe and Figma? Yes, you can using MCP servers. There's a question from Shana Das. Is Copilot at this stage capable of addressing tech debt inside a large code base just with an abstract prompt like address all tech debts? So like writing an abstract prompt like address all tech debts is not really a good idea, because imagine like 4 developers you have at your disposal and asking them to address all tech debts in one go, right? Like that doesn't really work out, right? Like they would not have the right context to go ahead and start working on it. So think of GitHub Copilot as a collaborator who has joined your team, and as like a mid-level engineer, you would want to give them the right context. You would want to give them the right sort of requirements so that it can go ahead and start giving you the solution. So make sure to specify your prompts in a bit more detail, but of course it can address the tech debts. Just make sure that you give it the right prompt. Ask it to maybe look into certain domains or a specific part of your project, and work on it incrementally. I think that's the best way to do it. There's another question from Gopi Krishnan. Can Copilot be integrated with CI/CD pipeline to automatically review pull requests for bugs? Yes, Gopi. So that is totally possible on GitHub Actions. So you can use the Copilot CLI for that, and that sort of segues me to the Copilot CLI. So I'll go ahead and launch my terminal. So I have my terminal up, and I'll go to my project. All right, so I'm in my project and I already have my Copilot CLI installed. So all I have to do is run the Copilot command. And just like that, it started a session over here. And within this session, it's asking me whether I can trust this folder. Again, like a similar flow, if you open up new project in VS Code, it asks you that. So I'll just go ahead and continue. It just logged me in with my account. It's like starting certain MCP servers. And once it is done, all I have to do is I can just go in and like start working with it, right? So like you can specify a specific agent. So like, let's say if you want to use a specific custom agent, you can define that. You can use that over here. You can select from a list of models and all that. Let's say I want to do something that is maybe not as easy to do within the IDE, right? Like let's say list all the branches, like Git branches that you have, and list all the Git branches on remote, and list and explain what each does in small in a sentence. Yeah, I think this is good enough. Cool. So it'll go ahead and like understand what my ask is, run certain command within the terminal, make certain calls and figure it out. So it's like listing all the branches in remote. And if you want to view what the output was, you can actually expand it using Control R. So like what it got and all. I'll minimize it again, but it'll go ahead and start working on it. So similarly, you can use this CLI within the within the GitHub Actions workflow, and actually use it to get answers there. All right. Since we are actually getting really close to our to the end of the session, I'd quickly like to talk about one last piece, which is the usage metrics. So you can actually go to github.com/enterprise, your enterprise name/insights, and you would find all the Copilot metrics. So this metrics information is in preview right now, but you can get a high level information around how your developers are actually working using GitHub Copilot. So like how many active users were there, what was the chat mode that they were using, the most used model, everything, right? And if you want more granular information around like user level usage metrics, you can get that information by exporting it from here, or you can actually use our APIs to get like user level JSON information for your organization or your enterprise. And then from that, you can use it to sort of get information around like what is working for your teams, what is not, right? Like let's say there's a lot of lines of code which is suggested for something like language Go or Rust, but most of it is rejected by your developer. So maybe there needs to be something that needs to be done over there, right? Maybe the instructions that are given to Copilot is not well enough, or the prompts are not formatted properly, or maybe Copilot does not have that capability yet. So that helps you get that understanding around what is lacking, what is working for your teams, what is not, and then you can sort of narrow down and get into it, right? So that's around the usage metrics that we have, but I'll be happy to discuss more about it. um, cool. So let's maybe get back to some questions that we had. So how can GitHub Copilot assist with desktop application development? Does GitHub Copilot support coding for desktop apps? Yes, you can use yes, Sandeepa, you can use GitHub Copilot for desktop application development as well. I see there is a question from Ranjit. When GitHub Copilot analyzes code, the process involves sending proprietary code to external servers for processing, which is common concerning regarding security and intellectual property. How are these secured? Can you provide more insights on this? So this is completely valid ask, and that is why we have our uh, Trust Center, which is the GitHub Copilot Trust Center, which details all the compliances that we follow, and also FAQs around like what really happens with your data. And more often than not, this is good enough for most of our customers and even their customers, right? At the end of the day. So please do review this. Please do take a look at this, and yeah, let us know if you have any specific questions around regarding security or intellectual property rights. There's a question from Anusha. Is there any way that we can fix latest version of packages will cause vulnerabilities using Copilot? So I think we already took a look at that. So Dependabot automatically identifies vulnerabilities in your dependencies and suggests fixes for it already. So I think that can take care of it. Will Copilot work with GitLab? So you can use GitHub Copilot within the IDE for repositories which are hosted on GitLab. That should not be a problem. For using GitHub Coding Agent, or for using uh, the code review agent and all these other agents that I talked about on github.com, you again need to have your repositories on github.com. But apart from that, for using everything within the IDE, which is your VS Code, IntelliJ, or Visual Studio, or any other IDE, you can do it with GitLab or Bitbucket or anything. There's a question from Krishna. Can you integrate Visual Studio to Copilot directly? Uh, it's so I don't actually have Visual Studio, on my laptop here. I'm using a Mac right now. I might be able to connect to a Windows desktop, but we can definitely, Krishna, we can take it separately. We have detailed videos and documentation on that too. So I think if you just do a quick Google search on that, that should help you. But if you still have questions, do reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to help you. A question from Rajdeep. When Copilot is running on behalf of me, will it have same privileges like me? There will be separate login account for Copilot. So when Copilot is running on behalf of you, it will have just the privileges of creating a pull request in draft and adding or creating a branch and adding commits over there, and it will have privileges of like running certain commands within the container that it is using, right? But apart from that, it cannot push code to your repository. It cannot make any changes to your system, even if you're running it within the CLI or your IDE. Whenever it is trying to make any of these commands work, right, it will ask for your permission. So a question from Sagar: what happens when usage limit of a particular model gets exhausted in between code generation? So there is no usage limit for specific models. You have your like over encompassing like premium request model, which is like nowhere related to any sort of tokens or anything. So yeah, so one premium request is one prompt. Doesn't matter what you get in as a suggestion in response. So there is no token limit as such that you would see with maybe some other tools. Yeah. Question from Rizwan: how do you ensure Copilot does not expose confidential or proprietary information? So I mentioned, right, like the Copilot proxy server makes sure that there is no confidential or proprietary information, just the way there's so many repositories on github.com, and there we make sure that no proprietary or confidential information is leaked. Similar to that, Copilot also works in that way. And then there's like, of course, secret scanning, which identifies if there are any secrets in your code repositories and sort of blocks them, right? But so that is there, like it identifies that, shows that over here, also helps you in remediation. But going a step forward, it also helps you in sort of making sure that you don't make your developers don't push any of these secrets to the repositories in the first place. So if I open one of these files, like let's say this index.ts, and if I try to edit this, right? So you might have heard of like pre-commit hooks and all, and people can use it to scan the code repository or scan the commits and make sure that no state is getting pushed. Well, that can be bypassed if somebody directly goes ahead and tries to edit it over here, like on github.com or any other repository provider. But with secret scanning enabled, let's say if I just a second. Yeah, so with secret scanning enabled, if I try to commit like a personal access token, or you can imagine this to be an Azure token, AWS API key or whatever, and try to commit it, this will be automatically blocked, right? So like it says you cannot do this and tells you why. So that kind of thing is something that is available with secret scanning, which is proactive in nature. All right, I see there is a question from Karthik. Could I know whether GitHub Copilot trial version license is available? I think you should reach out to your enterprise admin. They should be able to help you out. Does Copilot have an exclusive offline model to analyze and migrate Fortran code? So Bhanu, we don't have like an exclusive model. We have all these models that I showed you that are available. Now you can create your own custom agents on top of each of these models by providing it with like detailed instructions. If you want to use any sort of offline models using something like Olama, you can do that as well on the GitHub Copilot VS Code IDE. Okay, is this needed to be disabled or enabled? Allow GitHub to use my data for AI model training. So most likely what you're looking at right now is it's like it's for your free account or like for your GitHub account outside your organization. I'm talking about enterprises. So if you are working with enterprises, none of this option even shows up because GitHub Copilot does not use any of your, or GitHub does not use any of your information, especially for organization, for training. How can I generate a report that displays GitHub Copilot usage in terms of hours consumed by each user? So Rajesh, for that you can use, like, you can leverage our APIs to get the raw JSON information and then use that to sort of generate reports out of it. So that's totally possible. I think we have 3 minutes. I'll quickly like to talk about things that you can do with GitHub Copilot today, and then maybe I'll just finish with like taking some more questions. So you can maximize GitHub Copilot's potential by going through all these different use cases, but it's not limited to just these use cases. These are some examples that you can go through, and yeah, I think this should be relevant and helpful for most folks that are here. So please go over this as well if you want. A question from Chaitanya, whether model switching in between a functionality implementation in GitHub Copilot and VS Code will clear the previous history. So if you switched a model, that will not clear previous history in VS Code. Question from Rajesh, prompt sometimes timeout when using Copilot. Is this because of free version? Yes, Rajesh, that's most likely because of the free version, because certain models have limitations when you're using it in under free version. That's part of our fair usage policy. But since your organization already is moving towards Copilot adoption, please do reach out to them. What is the error rate in GitHub and GitHub Copilot? So Shamala, I would not have the exact error rate in GitHub and GitHub Copilot, like just like any other AI collaborative tool or agentic tool. It is probabilistic in nature. It can make mistakes, which is why we always suggest having human in the loop. That's also part of responsible AI, making sure that whatever AI is generating is aligning with our goals. And I think we have just a couple of more questions. How can we learn to use GitHub Copilot effectively? Is there any open source courses available? So one way to use one way to sort of use GitHub Copilot effectively is to go to this awesome GitHub Copilot open source project, which has a lot of reusable prompts, instructions, like a bunch of collections, like reusable agents that you can use. So do Bharat, can we access, just a second, can we get access to this PowerPoint presentation for future reference? So Bharat, I think you have access to this call recording. I think this call has been recorded, so that should be helpful. But if you need any more information, you can always reach out to us. And Prashant, I've just dropped in this particular link in chat. I'll also go ahead and drop in the trust page link in chat for people to refer. And yeah, that's pretty much it from me. If y'all have any other questions, I'm happy to stay back and answer them. I see there's a question from Ajin as well. But for folks who want to drop off, I think we are pretty much done. If you want to stay back and drop in some more questions, please feel free to do that. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks a
before
lot,
we-
Abhi.
yeah.
So,
Thank you.
for those
Thank
who,
you.
yeah. And thanks a lot for the participation. I have never seen a session with so many good questions. So people were really, really engaged. Thanks a lot for all who joined, asked so many wonderful questions. We were able to learn a lot also from those questions. Especially thanks to all the faculty members who joined from our partner institutions. Okay. Yeah. It was a good one, Abhi. So if there are any more questions, Abhi has kindly agreed to stay back for some more time. If there are questions, please post it here. And we will try to arrange more such sessions. Anurag, do you have any closing remarks?
Raj, nothing. I think this is Rajesh. Abhi, thank you so much for this session. Okay, it was a wonderful session, and I think it has given a lot of insight to most of